Hello. Hello. You guys like the nature sounds? You guys share the live, please. Hi, cutie. Hi, Cruz. Hi, Lumpy.
Hello.
Hello.
Join me on my drive home from work.
Let me plug my phone in to make sure it doesn't die at any point. Hi, Hells. Hi, Ash. Hello to everybody in the live. Appreciate it. Sorry.
Whoopsie.
I'm going on camera because Cruz is.
We should always be on camera.
Not
The
me.
boss.
I shouldn't always be
I
on
don't know about
camera.
always.
Always.
That's
No matter
suspicious.
what you're doing.
That's
Yeah.
very suspicious. We don't need to add to the cult allegations.
I will, hold on. I will never defeat the cult
Collective,
allegation.
you agree to always be on camera. Like what the?
I will never defeat the cult allegations.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Chico. Hi, Ash. Hi, Nabs. Hi, Historical Echo. Hi, Overton. Hi, Doom. Hi, everybody. All right, today we're going to talk about principled and unprincipled behavior. And we're going to have Cruz start off defining it and giving us a general idea of what we mean when we say principled. Are you good to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like principles in general, right, are a very broad subject. It's not just a communist thing or something like that. So the Oxford definition, like when you Google it, is the fundamental. Hold on, I had it pulled up, but it was like the fundamental truths, or the foundational structure of a belief system, an organization, an individual. Essentially, the guiding moral that any one group or person will follow.
Okay. Do you want to discuss some examples of that?
So, within, say, our own spaces, the general guiding principles of Marxism, right? So, dialectical materialism and historical materialism, um, operating within material reality and not idealism, uh, fighting for, say, the equitable treatment of people, from each according to their ability, from each according to, or to each according to their need, and from each according to their ability, stuff like that. But then if you look at, say, your general, take a workplace, right? There's a guiding principle behind your workplace, whether it be the government facility that you work for, like I work for a library. There's specific principles.
They got him.
What in the world? What happened?
He'll probably be back.
All right, we can give it a beat. It's fine.
But yeah, I mean, principles are just things that you follow. You know what I mean? And when you're in an organization, you need to collectively follow the principles of that organization. Otherwise, you're breaking trust of the people around you. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think
you're not screwing other people over.
Cruz is loading up. Wait, how did Historical Echo get in here? Sorry, you can't be in here. I don't know how you got up here, but
like, is this Cruz?
yeah, I was like, what's going on? Yeah, nothing personal, but
Historical's like, I don't know what
it's not like a debate live. He's probably like, I don't even know how I got up here. I was gonna say, since Cruz is on vacation for a minute or two, if we want to talk about like how people define principles as far as like an individual perspective versus a more communal communist perspective, like organizational perspective. Because I think that like someone, generally they kind of are the same thing, but they're not always the same thing, because if you're thinking from an individual standpoint, you're more focused on like yourself and what your principles mean to you rather than being in the service of a group.
Yeah. I think when you're an individual and you have principles, they can be good or bad, based
Right.
on what they are, obviously. But I think a lot of the time, individual principles are usually, you're just holding yourself accountable. Sometimes people don't hold themselves accountable and hold other people to those principles.
Right.
Which is unprincipled behavior. But
Right.
I think for the most part, people, on an individual level, when they have principles, it's something like, I don't eat snacks during the day, and I make sure. You know what I mean? It's like little rules they have for yourself, and they usually try not to impose that on other people. I think when it comes to an organization, you have to acknowledge that there's a different, experience going on. There's a different expectation that these principles are not for any individual person. It's for the organization, so everybody that's a part of it. Know what I mean? So you have to hold other people accountable, and you have to hold yourself accountable, and other people have to hold you accountable. You know what I mean?
And I think like part of that involves reshaping like the way we're finding our principles, right? Because you may have principle areas in which your principles are a little bit on the weak side, or you're a bit of a hypocrite, and we all have to continue to do that work, and it's a lifelong process that doesn't end if you aim to be in a revolutionary capacity working towards the goals of the revolutionary cause. I guess I don't know if I'm kind of worried that Cruz got bananaed or something.
Yeah, I don't know. But like,
He said something. I'll try to look up and see what he said.
We can just move forward and jump back to his parts if he comes back.
Yeah, Cruz's comment is also gone. Oh, Cruz said lost signal, so give him a second. Okay.
Okay.
He'll be back.
So if you, Lumpy, want to talk about how... Hold on, I just got a message. Let's see. He got suspended. That's wild. Somebody was being unprincipled in here.
I know. Wow. All right.
Thanks for that, guys. Anyway,
I don't know how that happened, but yeah, and you didn't get a warning or anything, and he got suspended?
I got nothing.
Yes.
We're still going to talk about what we're going to talk about, but yeah, that's an example of unprincipled behavior.
Definitely.
Supporting somebody because you don't like something that they're saying. But yeah, if you want to move forward, Lumpy, with talking a little bit about how not adhering to principles can cause issues with like the government and government infiltration.
Yeah. So my whole section was the government and the infiltration and the other tactics that they do. But I wanted to start with a not so much a personal story, but a secondhand story. This happened to a friend of mine that I know. So back in 2019, a friend of mine was in a DM on Twitter. There was something akin to like an SRA, right? So with a bunch of other left-leaning people. They would share, I wrote this down because I don't want to say any, I don't want to say any bad words. They would share, quips and talk about their pew-pews, and every once in a while a red flag was said, but they would just laugh it off as a joke. August 4th, 2019. There was an event in Dayton, Ohio, which unalived 9 people, one being the perpetrator's sibling, who was a trans man. That perpetrator happened to be in that DM group and happened to say a few of those red flags. The FBI contacted every last member of that group, and some of them were paid visits because of this. So, this is the line I said, just, if you want to be a Ted in the cabin in the woods by yourself, so be it. But you have to think about any group that you're a part of can be hurt by these questionable acts. That you need to, watch yourself and think about the people that you're, in these communities with, because you end up hurting them too. And you end up hurting the movement, you end up hurting a lot of things. So, anyhow, let me get into a little of the history of the government infiltration and other tactics. So the government, in particular, the FBI, in cahoots with the state and local cops, have done this infiltration stuff since its inception. But even before and during the labor wars of the late 1800s and throughout, corporations would hire Pinkertons, these outside privatized wannabe cops, to act as workers and gather info, deter people from unionizing, and even make strikes much more dangerous with aventurism stuff like throwing bricks at cops all the way to setting off bombs. But another thing they would do is, they would convince other workers to do this stuff because they could find something on that worker, or they could, like so these workers in these unions, they could, get one of them to go against their principles of being, part of that union. So that's basically, we can look back, with the FBI on that stuff. And then I wanted to bring up the domestic surveillance that was found out in the mid 80s. They found out, there was a whole congressional thing on this and everything in the 80s, and they found out that the FBI wiretapped thousands of homes, including U.S. citizens in the 40s and 50s, and I'm going to say beyond, especially journalists and labor activists. Now, in the age of the internet, they have come up with laws protecting their spying, especially since 9/11. Every social media platform is run by a corporation, and that is how they get access. In the 1980s, people were upset about this. I remember I was a teenager. People were upset about it. You were tapping, citizens. But then after 9/11, many just embraced it because of the fear mongering that went on. So, in this sense, you have to always realize they'll listen. It could be, you could just be doing, making a joke or something like that. But if tweaks or something happens within that time, they have the capability, especially with AI now, to really find, who is saying these things and what's being said. So, just to be careful with that. Operation Solo. So I want to bring up Solo. It ran in tandem with the next one that I'm going to bring up, the big one everyone knows about. But Solo ran from 1952 to 1977, in particular to infiltrate communist orgs. CPUSA was the big one. This is the one that was done with the CIA. So they did it with the CIA because it was leaving our borders. So what they did, they got 2 brothers who were happy involved in the CPUSA since they were since the 20s. They were in their teens when they joined. They were in the youth and stuff like that. And when all the way up to 1947, and then that's when the oldest brother, Morris, who happened to be the editor of the Daily Worker, which was the CPUSA newspaper, all the way up to there, and and their last name, just so you know, it's Morris Childs and Jack Childs. Just so you, if you want to look this up, but he was fired from the Daily Worker because he misrepresented some information that Moscow was trying to pass on. And so they fired him, but his health went bad right after that, or it was like during that, his health started getting bad. So his younger brother, Jack, was mad that the CPUSA did this, that they were standing by their principles, like, getting rid of him as an editor because he was, he was not passing on the right information. So the FBI had been looking for someone, so this was their door into it. And the whole thing, like, Morris and Jack both didn't want their fellow communists to get hurt, but how is it that if you're spying, you're going to foreign countries, you're meeting with people like Mao, you're meeting with people like Fidel Castro, you're gathering information? How is it that how is that principled? You're thinking about your other, you don't want the local communists that you know and love, but you're like hurting the whole entire movement by doing this just because you are angry, at like one thing that actually makes sense. Like, they didn't need to, keep him on and stuff like that if he's not going to tell the right stuff. So brings me, well, okay, right here I wrote, like, you may, like, I'm thinking, like, it might have been a stretch, like, you're thinking that's that, but, like, just what I was saying, like, if you're getting hurt and you're just going to hurt the whole movement together, if you really cared about that movement, you wouldn't, even if you get angry at it, you kind of have to, go your own way. Like, don't be spying. Yeah. So that brings us to April 1971. That doesn't look like Ash.
Hi, Comrade Ash here, filling in for Compañero Cruz.
Let's go back to Cruz and then come back to
I just want to chime in real quick and say that, like, on what you said, Lumpy, that is why we need to remember as individuals that when we're organizing, whether it's a party or a different organization, they don't have to tell us everything. That's for security purposes. So when we see people complaining about not knowing all the inner workings of things, you have to understand that this is how organization works, and that those rules are put in place not only for your security, but for the security of everyone involved and for the security of the cause. So I just wanted to state that connection. Go on, Cruz. We didn't really
do not have to know everything.
Right. And getting out of that mindset is very important as a part of our movement. That is an individualist mindset, the mindset that you have the entitlement to all information. You don't.
So what I missed?
Went through and like my example of unprincipled and what came about and some of the government stuff, but I did not get into the counterintelligence program yet. So why don't you go through your stuff, and then, because I know that you had a little bit on that too, so we can circle back to that.
I mean, with COINTELPRO, I was just going to kind of bring it up as like an example of not so much principled or unprincipled behavior, but of the importance for operation security, OPSEC.
Yeah, basically, that's basically why we need to talk about it, like, because these are the things that can infiltrate. Like, these are the openings given when you're being unprincipled and stuff, is what I was thinking.
Exactly. Being unprincipled can and I kind of came in at the end of what you were saying, and it sounded like you were talking about like people coming in and spying and reporting back to like another group or something. And it doesn't always have to be an extreme, like, say, the government, the FBI, as was the case with COINTELPRO. It can be so much as, like, within TikTok, one organizational group having spies of other organizational groups. And I'm sure anyone that's ever been in a Discord server of any kind knows that there's pretty regularly you will encounter at least one person who maybe is a part of two groups. One doesn't like the other one. That individual likes one group more than the other one, and they just start reporting everything over. And then that creates conflict, beef, and conflicting principles with each other. Hence the importance of operational security. And why you don't need to know everything. Like, you just fundamentally don't get to know everything.
I mean, this is also why the aspect of, like, when we're talking about critiquing people, understanding that, hey, you know, it's fair to make critiques. It's also important to know what you may not know and what you may not be privy to and why, and keep that in perspective. We know of different, you know, occurrences of within actual parties where people aren't given information and all of a sudden that becomes a huge scandal. And so again, we have to push back on that kind of individualist perspective. And I would say that's probably one of the most important things in this movement, because you are not just doing it for yourself as an individual. So, yeah, I agree.
If it helps, maybe ask yourself, why don't I know this thing?
Yeah.
Wait, what is it? Why am I not allowed to know this information?
What are you going to do with that information if you're not
Right.
going to do anything with it? And you know that the organization has nothing for you to do with that information. You do not need to know that information.
And, you know, principled behavior, to sideline a little bit, because we're talking about the specifics of security, but also, you know, when it comes to principled behavior in terms of, like, how we treat our comrades and how we engage in ways that might be coming and serving an individualist kind of mindset within groups, those are important things to consider too. But anyway, I want to talk about a group that I think, let's see, give me a second. Where were we? We had to jump around a little bit, so
Things got thrown a little out of whack.
it's fine. We're going to keep it moving. I'm just trying to make sure we get everything. So
Go and
Go ahead.
Listen, don't drive while you're on.
stuff and then move on from there. And
yeah,
okay,
that sounds good.
I'll do that. So, in April 1971, anti-war activists broke into an office of Selected Services, a draft agency, in Pennsylvania, to destroy any records of the draft. But there was an FBI office there, and they found a whole bunch of records on an illegal program called the Counterintelligence Program, COINTELPRO. That had been going on for almost two decades at that time. This was, it started like back in 1940. So it was, they were using this. So this was kind of more the domestic one that they used on the CPUSA too, but they more targeted, like they did go after the anti-war orgs, they did go after the feminist groups, but the ones that we know more about were the civil rights leaders and the community orgs, you know, like set up by Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. So the Black Panthers is the one, but you can go even to the letter that was, you know, sent to MLK telling him to unalive himself. You know, that was from them. So they used like a whole crap load of different tactics. And so like you leave yourself open if you, you know what I mean? You leave yourself open to having these things, you know, sneak in, or you know, helping this if you're not careful. So they used outright lies and rumors, especially about those in leadership. They did this to ping groups off of each other. So they planted evidence and got rid of evidence that would prove and presume guilty were innocent. They used psychological warfare, wrongful imprisonment, or extending prison sentences, or just open-ending a prison sentence, like you could serve 1 to 1 million years or whatever, or just not having that. So they played games like that and just outright unaliving members, especially leadership. And a lot of times with these games, like what they were doing, like those prison sentences. Hey, you want a lower sentence, for stealing that pack of cigarettes, and you're already in here for 8 years. How about you rat on your, on the people, and stuff like that. So, but they were doing this to learn as much as they could, and that's another important reason why you want to keep not telling everybody everything. That is why I don't know everything in prison. And that's just that. So I didn't know if anyone wanted to add.
I want to add something. I think that to that note, when we might start off with just, hey, let me gossip a little bit with some people about some stuff, right? About what someone in the group may or may not be doing. Like, that is how it starts. And then as you move that line further and further, because it doesn't seem like you don't start off betraying a comrade in a party. You start off with small behaviors that start to look, where the next behavior looks a little bit less harmful than it might have looked at the beginning. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's why we have to work on being disciplined in our principles and not allowing ourselves to get drawn into things that are not going to serve the cause and are not going to serve our groups. And I think that a big aspect of that is that a lot of us have liberal leanings that we've been basically brainwashed into. They've been brainwashed into us that we have to work to disrupt. And we have to work together, because you might have a blind spot in your behavior and I might have a blind spot in my behavior, but us being able to have those conversations with each other in a respectful manner allows us to both grow in our work. So
I'll add to that a little bit, just to kind of just make a small statement, right? So you say it starts with gossip. Maybe you just chatting with someone, and then gradually over time, like you said, that just builds upon itself. That's the quantitative quality, right? And that will inevitably lead to a qualitative change. Now, what we saw, like with COINTELPRO, or say the Black Panthers, was assassinations of leaders, disbandment of chapters, and it all started with very small instances. You got to be aware that in the moment it might seem small, but later on it's going to be added to a laundry list of things that led to that qualitative change. That's dialectics.
Right. And then the other aspect of it is understanding that, let's say you're gossiping on TikTok and Alive. Guess what? You're doing anti-communist behavior. You're doing anti-revolutionary behavior. Because you're basically setting a stage for anybody to come in and take what you're doing and run with it and use it to perpetuate anti-communism, whatever your aspect of revolutionary action is, if you're Maoist, what have you. We can't be doing that. We have to try to be an example of what principled behavior is at all times, especially when we know that we're being viewed. So, let's see. Go ahead.
You never know who's watching. You got to keep that in mind.
The other aspect, I want to actually say one more thing, is that if you're trying to be in groups and you want people to trust you, but everybody sees that you're doing these things, like, people clock it within the organizations too. And allowing people into like an inner core of an organization or working with them means that you do assess their ability to keep things quiet and not be talking about every single thing that they're doing. So just to keep that in mind as well. There's a lot of angles to this. But anyway, I feel like where are we in terms of our topics? Let's see. Because I did sidetrack it a little bit, but I think it's important to directly correlate it to being principled, because I think people will look at like these issues with the government and be like, well, how does that relate to me, right? And it does. Oh, let me see here. Cutie, you were going to speak a little bit on... Sorry, give me a second.
Just like principles.
Yeah.
The server,
You
you're
were going to speak...
they can actually look at that. So
Yeah, we have an outline. I just was in the wrong section. Cutie was going to speak a little bit on the Black Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, it's a particular, just a particular text from them. I mean, it's rules of the Black Panther Party, where it's just like, I don't know, it seems something so mundane that you don't even think about it. Like, you see all these, communists, writing all sorts of different things. And you don't really, a lot of the time, we don't really think of them as being just a member of a much larger and broader movement and, organization. And, within the Black Panthers, obviously it's called Rules of the Black Panther Party. That's where you can find it. It should be on Marxist.org. And it's just got some, like, basic stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's just saying don't swear at people, speak politely. If you're borrowing from something from somebody, make sure that you actually return it. You know what I mean? It's just common sense type of stuff. You know what I mean? Because, like, for communists, you wouldn't think that it needs to be like a huge deal to be like, well, yeah, let's get this in writing that if you borrow something, you got to return it. You know what I mean? But like little tiny things that like we were talking about before, tiny issues like, well, I like this guy, but I borrowed something, or he borrowed something from me and he hasn't given it back to me. You know what I mean? Or he got something from me and he broke it and he hasn't paid me back for it. Tiny issues like that can like cause huge rifts, moving forward. Because if you don't like somebody, you kind of don't want to work with them. You know what I mean? And if you really don't like somebody, even if you agree with them, you kind of don't want to agree with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff where it's basically like, again, like basic stuff that should be common sense, right? Where it's like, don't harass women in the party. You know what I mean? Like, don't try to be dating them. Like, you're not here to find
Raise everybody up.
You know what I mean? Like, you're here to organize. You're here to be a part of the group. You know what I mean? To get some shit done. You're not here to like, this isn't Tinder for comedy. You know what I mean? And it's just basic stuff like that. Like, don't show up being drunk. Don't use narcotics. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But
I think a lot of
principles that you need to apply to other people, because like, sure, one person might be okay, coming in and they're a little tipsy, everything's fine. But like, if somebody sees somebody else doing that, they think it's okay for them to do it. You know what I mean? And
right.
that can.
And if there's no enforcement
in your whole organization, is that now everybody working the front desk, everybody going out in the streets and doing all sorts of stuff is just drunk. You know what I mean? Like that's no way to run an organization. So you got to make sure that people are showing up and they're all set up to do their work. You know what I mean?
I feel like it was written down because that's all individualism stuff. That's all stuff you do.
Yep.
When you're not thinking of community and the people that you're. Because even if you're working in an office, I worked in plenty of offices and couldn't stand a lot of people, but we had to get things done. So I had to work with them, and so you have to put some stuff aside in order to do what has to get done.
Right. I was going to say that it kind of leads back to this idea that I was thinking about. A lot of people that are coming into the movement, they still hold on to that individualist perspective of like, yeah, this is going to be great. I'm going to be rebellious. Like, no, actually, there's a lot of structure and discipline that goes into organization and actually making things happen. And you are going to have to push back on that tendency that you have if you have those tendencies. And you are going to have to push back on that in people in your proximity. Yeah. And there's ways to do that, and there's ways not to do it, right? Like, there's unprincipled ways to, like, there's a difference between attack and critique. We all have to be working on ourselves all the time. This is part of the work. Cruz was saying something earlier. I wanted to.
I'm trying to remember what I was saying. I might have lost my. I was going to say, so like,
Yeah.
you know, you have these principles and you write those principles down, even if they seem like common sense stuff, but you have to do it because that's what allows enforcement, right? You have to, as an organization, you have to enforce those principles and ensure that everyone is following them. Because to Cutie's point, if one person gets away with it, then everyone starts doing it, and then suddenly it's no longer a principle. It's no longer a guiding. It's no longer the guiding principle of your party. Your party starts becoming something different.
And these things always seem they seem weird to some people, in especially like the United States, because we were raised to be individual. So we were raised to, like, I remember a couple of years ago there was a video going around of a bunch of kids in China in a big huge circle, and they were just passing a ball to each other, and they were just, that's all they were doing, passing the ball. And all the comments on Twitter about it were like, this is just like, look at how, you know, they're all, you know, in this cult, or they're doing this. And it's not that. They're working on, you know, working together. Like that's all that exercise was, is like how you work together. And that's all they're doing. But we're brought up in the society of hyper individuality. So
Yeah, every man for themselves, get what you can out of situations. Like, that's going to take a while to, I mean, like, that's not something you, just because you say, hey, I'm a communist or I'm a Maoist, that doesn't just disappear. And it's important to understand that there are meanings to calling yourself these things. They're not just labels that you can just freely take on and not do the work, because people notice. So,
yeah. I mean, something just as simple, you know, as actually correcting somebody, you know what I mean, enforcing those principles, has their own principles, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, you can't, like if somebody shows up and they're, you know, they're drunk or whatever, you can't just automatically go straight into, you know, yelling and swearing at them, you know what I mean?
Right, not reactionary kind of behavior.
Like, it's right here. It says 8 points of action, and number 1 is speak politely. Number 5 is do not hit or swear at people. You know what I mean? And that's those are two pretty fundamental things to correcting somebody and making them actually be interested in following those you know, those principles. Because if you can convince them that they're principles that they should follow, or you explain to them politely that, like, these are the rules and, you know, they have to follow them, or, you know, not be there anymore. You know what I mean? And you're not going to convince somebody of that if you're, you know, yelling at them, swearing at them, hitting them. You know what I mean? So
I've seen it on social media, like, go at a mutual, like, in a way that you would go at a right-wing troll or a liberal something. And it's like, no, have respect for the people that are, you know, trying to learn, or at least are, you know, are showing that they're trying to be there or on your side. They may get something wrong. You don't need to pounce on them entirely. I mean, unless it's like something obviously bad. But I'm saying, like, if they're getting a piece of the theory wrong or something like that, you don't need to pounce on them.
I think an observation, like, something that's important too, is observing, like, if you have trouble giving people, like let's say you have a comrade that you think is acting in unprincipled ways and you're not sure how to approach it, you can speak to someone. I mean, within your organization, that process is going to be different, but overall, like, look at people you know that in your group that know how to handle conflict well, and ask them for advice. Like, these are things that commonly are overlooked, and there's a lot of reactionary behavior, especially that's sort of reinforced within communities like TikTok and Discord. And that all comes through capitalism ultimately, but, like, those places can be like nests for that type of encouraging reactionary behavior. And ultimately, that's not being principled. Being principled is not embarrassing somebody in front of everybody, you know? There are ways to pull someone aside that you know and have a discussion with them. And there's also a vulnerability in that, like the ability to admit, hey, I might correct someone and I might not understand like I might correct them and I might be wrong in some area, and they're going to maybe give me pushback. And these are all areas that it seems to me, and this is part of why I'm doing this episode, people want to sidestep that work, and just think about what's going on in like other places and the larger picture, which is important. But you are a part of that. If you're a part of this movement, you are a part of that, and the way that you behave does affect that.
Yeah. I wanted to Echo's point. Yes, I swear a lot. Just don't swear at people.
I grew up around sailors, so like if you're talking to me casually, I'm constantly swearing, and a lot of times I don't even notice that I'm doing it. It just happens. I'm sure. You could tell you.
I was just gonna.
Like, I'll just say a word. I won't even notice that I said it. But you know, that's one of those individualist things that I have to work on to better serve the collective.
I also think, like, you know, we can help people in that situation by us, like, hey, if you have a boundary around that, speak the boundary to that comrade. You know, instead of kind of sort of what I see as an alternative to that is people let these things kind of build up, and then before you know it, they're having a TikTok live on what someone's doing. And if you ask them, oftentimes they never went to that individual to try to speak to them on these things, and they allowed it to build up. And that, in combination with unprincipled behavior, now created this huge scandal that honestly just causes division. But at the time, once it's that big, nobody wants to look at their own actions because it's too murky. There's too many people involved. So I want to emphasize that we need to be questioning when we're seeing things like this going on in TikTok. What is actually going on? And how is that affecting, like, the movement? Regardless of the person making those, like, doing the live, like, regardless of them as an individual, what is actually happening here? Anyway,
it is okay to call each other out, to offer corrections, and hold our principles, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to be mean about it. Doesn't mean that that person is the worst person in the history of the world and should face the wall or be purged or something. It's just like, hey, let's address this now before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, it's good practice to actually be able to, call someone out and also be able to take criticism and grow from it.
Right. And I also want to say that an important part of that is like building. So people talk about building community, right? And I think a lot of times, because we're coming from this sort of like perspective of liberalism, when people think of building communities, what they often think about first is, who do we want to keep out? But really what we need to be working on is like, how do we, because obviously that's an important aspect of the work we do, but also like, how do we work with the people that are in the group or coming into the group and facilitate trust and connection between those people, so it's easier for those people to learn these skills. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think that's an important aspect of it, because it's very easy to be like we need to call people out when they are doing things that are inappropriate. We also need to facilitate the relationships built on trust and principled behavior and a history of that with people, so that when we come to them, they know we're not on some BS. And also, our reputation precedes itself as being someone principled. That's like what we all have to work on, I think. Lumpy, do you have anything you want to add, or Cutie?
I mean, I think particularly with regards to like the TikTok space, I suppose, right? Specifically with like, I guess, like call out type of situations, right? I think if we have access to this person, right, like we can send them a DM and then discuss this with them first. That should be the move. That's making a public spectacle out of it, right?
100%.
I think obviously if they say something that's just ridiculous, like just absurd, you know what I mean? It needs to be, immediately stopped, right? It needs to be called out right away, right? But if it's like, somebody's way of behaving, or it's not something that's like a really huge, immediate pressing issue in like a public space, for the love of God, send them a DM, message them. If they don't, if they're not receptive to it, obviously, you can take steps beyond that point, but at least try to talk to them personally first.
Agreed.
Ask yourself, does there need to be a video about this particular issue?
Yeah.
Right.
Because somebody could post Cruz/Ash right here could post a video that is like super problematic and they just don't get it. You know what I mean? I could now respond to them with a video calling them out. Or I could DM them, tell them how it's problematic, and then they might end up deleting the video, and there you go. You know what I mean?
So, like, okay, I don't have a good example, but I'll say, like, the way that exchange might go is I, Ash, the one and only, saying some fuck shit.
Crash.
But not ask someone. Cash. I make a video, and it's problematic, right? Cutie messages me and goes, hey, Ash, that was super problematic. And I might go, what do you mean? How? And then we have a back and forth exchange, and it becomes a learning experience. Say, like, and Cutie can explain to me, like, how that is problematic. And then the natural outcome of that is either I take the video down or I double down and say, you're wrong. Then that's when Cutie might make a video saying, hey, Ash is being super problematic. Here's how.
Yeah. Because there's holding somebody accountable in a personal sense.
Sorry,
And
Ash.
if they're not willing to have that happen, you know what I mean? If they're not willing to be accountable for their actions in a private manner, then, at that point, it's, to me at least, it's free game. You know what I mean? If they're not willing to participate in that, then you don't have to either. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I want to touch on an aspect of that, which is you don't have to like every comrade, bro. I'm going to say bro because I'm going to talk to you guys like your friends. But you got to respect them. If they're doing the work, you got to respect them. And I think people get those two things a little bit confused. And it's like, hey, if this person's upsetting me because I don't vibe with them, that means they're problematic. And that's liberal bullshit. That's not what we're here to do.
Exactly.
And it's also possible, and it's unlikely. It's an unlikely turn of events, but it's also possible that you're overreacting. You know what I mean? Maybe you're not getting the point of the video, right?
Right.
And you're gonna accidentally cause some sort of issue because, like, you just didn't understand the video.
Right. You may not be in a place where, for whatever reason, you're grasping it, and that's okay too. It's okay to ask questions. I think these are all important, factors in developing principles. Is going like, hey, I watched this, I didn't get it. Can you explain this element of it to me, so I can understand?
So, that's the importance of also, DMing somebody and messaging them if you have access to them, right? Like, if it's possible that you think they're being problematic, but your reaction is going to be also problematic. You know what I mean?
Which we've seen all the time.
So it's possible that you'll, Cruz will have, Bearded Ash will have.
Thank you.
Made their video, and I think it's problematic, and then I send them a DM about it. They explain it, and it turns out it's not. You know what I mean? And I'm like, all right, well, there we go. Now
and it could be as simple as
it
could be as simple as maybe in that original video, right? I didn't explain my point well enough, so it came off as problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
Or that you might have a position in your learning that a person watching it doesn't have, or they may be more advanced than you. And so, all of those things are going to happen in this.
We don't have to be hostile to each other.
Yeah. Literally just ask
We
questions.
don't have to be hostile.
I felt like we covered a lot of ground today, and I think this topic can be expanded on in a later episode. But do you guys have anything in particular? Because in this particular area, it's sort of hard to find books to read on it, but Mayo did point out a document, and QD pointed out a document as well.
They're the same document, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the name of the document?
It's called Rules for the Black Panther Party. I'm
Okay.
going to make sure that I gave you the right title.
Yeah. I'm actually probably
rules of the Black Panther Party. It is
Okay.
on Marxist.org.
I'm going to be posting a video on it because I think it's important to put out there. I think all of us are coming from very different life experiences, different places, and we all seek to work together, and we have to keep that goal first and foremost in our mind. And that sometimes can mean that we need to have disagreements so that we can get on the same page. And sometimes it means, like, I'm not going to get something you're saying for 6 months because I need to do some reading and process it. And that's okay too.
Yes. We didn't really talk about it, but another good thing to read about, and there's not a specific book about it that I'm aware of, but to, look into democratic centralism and, trying to understand that, especially since, within organizations, there's times where people make a decision that you disagree with, actually. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because you're in the organization, you have to suck it up. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And,
You adhere to
go through with the plan and do your job as a member of the organization. And if you disagree, you can talk about it. You guys vote about it. You know what I mean? So,
and at the following meeting, if that plan didn't work out too well, you can come up with a new one and you vote again, and then you stick to that plan. Like, it's an evolving process. It's not one and done.
Right.
Don't make a public spectacle out of your disagreement. Don't be Trotsky. Don't be Trotsky.
Yes, combating liberalism does speak on a few of these things as well. I want to say that I personally think that it's important to not just stick to like combating liberalism on its own, but try to round out your knowledge of these things and connect them to your experience and make observations of the people around you and how they may be working in principled and unprincipled ways. And it doesn't mean you have to go and just be like, hey, I just watched this thing or read this thing, you guys are all doing this. But take some time to process it, right? Because all information requires processing, and behavior definitely requires some processing in order to integrate.
The thing that Midwestern Maoist brought up, or Maoist, sorry, Maoist, that is the book I was thinking too, because that was the one that we read with the Maoists, is the, how it was talking about calling people out, or how to do it, and then being able to take criticism and all that. If you remember back, 6 months ago when we were reading that.
Yeah.
The one is the Arlington Activist Study Guide from the CPP Maoist. So that's actually, it's a good one to read, just to understand how to be better principled in that way.
Arling Activista. Did I say that correctly? Correct me if I'm wrong.
How to say
almost
it.
Certainly, I don't think you did say it correctly, but
that's fine.
I don't know how to say it correctly either, so I wouldn't be able to know.
Yeah, it's my best guess. I can, if you guys, Nico, DM me that, I will look into it and maybe make a video on that as well, because I think these things should be disseminated as much as possible for people to learn these skills. Anybody else want to say anything on this topic before we close out here today?
I think I am good.
Any questions, or are we?
Questions anybody have in the comment section?
I will say, real quick, before you take questions, I do need to head out.
That's okay.
I have something I want to say.
I got your message.
From Ash, we love you. And just, keep to the principles,
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to the principal's office again.
Exactly.
I don't recall us making a vote about allowing you to leave or not.
I'm going to take
make a video about
this. I'm going to make a live.
Individualist route and close out. So, mwah.
Bye, Cruz.
Bye, Cruz. It's a pleasure having you always. You know what, Hells? I'm going to reiterate this because I always feel like it needs to be reiterated. The purpose of this space is to teach people about a variety of things from Marxist-Leninist perspective. It is not to do debate. That's the reason we don't allow people. What is going on here? I had a puzzle come up right now to verify my account. That's wild.
I had that one time when I was
Not
online.
the puzzle in the middle of a live. Anyway,
No.
I nailed it as usual. This is a space for people to come and learn. It's not a space for us to like engage in unprincipled behavior or just sit around and critique. Like when we talk about things that we're critiquing, our intention is to point out the way we view them as like Marxist Leninists and what we know. It isn't to make an individual feel like crap. So that said, I want to thank all of you for coming. I always appreciate the people that show up regularly because we do put time and effort into putting these things together, believe it or not. So have a wonderful day and thanks for showing up.
Yeah, and the show Friday night, 8:00.
Yeah, come to the live on Friday at Collective TV on YouTube. Hopefully, we'll see you all there.
And next week, Sylvie, Cutie, and I doing another guess the
Yeah,
person.
good point. Sorry. Yeah, so we're doing a thing where collective re-education now is every week. So this week is me and the crew, and next week will be Lumpy and Cutie. And they're slightly different formats, so I really encourage you to come check out next Wednesday, the live that Lumpy will be doing. And we'll be doing this regularly moving on. So see you guys next Wednesday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.